Hey everybody, I was wondering if you wanted to suggest the color for the yellow. I'm picking yellow this time. It's the last one, so congratulations if you were saying yellow this entire time. It's your episode. Alright, there we go. I'm a little confused why the lighting back here looks more green than yellow, but, the light spectrum is a very complicated part of science, physics, and quantum mechanics. We haven't figured all that out yet. Alright, today we're going to be talking about the Gods Knights. Dun 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 dun! You want to know something kind of lame? At least I find it kind of lame. They're not actually called the Gods Knights, in any translation, right? Like they're the Holy Knights or the Knights of God. There's a few other ways to look at them. In Japanese, they're Kami no Kishidan. Kami no Kishidan, right? But yeah, I'm gonna call them God's Knights because I just think that sounds cooler. There's some translations that do God's Knights, but like the most literal translation of their name is not that. But it sounds cool, right? Okay, go 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 God's Knights. You think they have a theme song? We haven't even gotten into talking about the individual members or anything yet, but do you think the Gods Knights have a theme song? Do you think they took time out of the day to sit around and so Emu summons them, right? Like, yes, my devoted Gods Knights, assemble below the empty throne and I shall give you your orders. We're gonna make a really sick theme song, It's like Power Rangers, except Emu is Zordon, and the rest of the Gods Knights are all like, celestial dragons with attitude, I guess. I don't know. But, yeah, they might have a theme song. I can see that. The Jerma have a theme song. Why can't they? I was like, all right. So we now know, at least we have seen, 10 confirmed members of the Gods Knights. Actually 11 if you want to count Cerberus. Cerberus being Shamrock's sword that has the power of the mythical zone model Cerberus. So Cerberus is a good doggo. He deserves a title as well. He's the mascot of the Gods Knights, right? It's like, you need to have like an animal companion. The Thundercats had Snarf and the Gods Knights have Cerberus. That's just how that goes, right? We have 5 named characters. We got Saint Figarland Garling, who used to be the supreme commander of the Gods Knights before he was promoted to the member of the Gorosei after Saturn was eliminated. Then we have his son, Figarland Shamrock, who is the commander of the Gods Knights. I originally assumed that Shamrock was given the title of supreme commander after his father had been promoted. Shamrock might still get that position because, they're still in the middle of restructuring everything, but he was introduced as the commander of the Gods Knights. We're going to go a little bit more into those titles here in a moment. Then, of course, we have Manmeyer Gunko, who was originally just listed as Gunko, but in the most recent SBS was revealed she actually is a member of the Manmeyer family. Also, she is the devoted Blade of God, which might serve as a God's Knight in training kind of position, not officially a member yet in the flashback. She is now, but back then maybe she was just trying out to become a God's Knight at God Valley. A lot of discussion of gods going on here. Then we have Summers. We have Shepard Summers, who was a member of the same family as Shepard Jew Peter, one of the members of the Gorosei. We also see him in the flashback there. He has the power of the Thorn fruit and is present right now at Elbaf. And then we also have Saint Limoshiff Killingham, who has the power of the mythical zone, the Kirin. All right, he could turn into a dragon, a type of dragon mythical zone, okay? And we didn't know what he looked like for the longest time, and in the most recent chapters, right before we got to the flashback, it was revealed that, oh no, he's kind of hot! He's got cool hair and fanged teeth. Yeah, all right. So those are the 5 named characters we have so far, but we also have 5 individuals that we don't know the names of. 2 of them we actually saw way back during Kuma's flashback at God Valley. We saw a woman with dark hair. When we see her in the anime, she's blonde, but both instances now in the flashback in Kuma's story and also right now in the flashback, we see this woman and she has dark hair. So that's just an anime error, and they'll probably correct that the next time we get to that flashback, right? We also have a dude that's wearing a bull skull helmet, and he wields a Grim Reaper scythe. So I'm just going to call him Skull Knight from now on, like from Yu-Gi-Oh! Skull
Skull Knight 1, the original, the fusion monster, not Skull Knight 2. Skull Knight 2 kind of sucked. Skull Guardian, on the other hand, though, ritual monster, don't get to see him very often, but I'm going to go with Skull Knight because that sounds cool. Also, the similarities between him and when Road was pretending to be the sun god and put on the helmet, not lost on me. Still a little bit confused. Remember, Road was a dork. He was a dork, and he's an otaku, and he best decided to appear as the sun god. I'm going to put on this cloak, and I'm going to wear a bull skull. Where did he come up with that interpretation? Because I feel like he wouldn't have just pulled that out of nothing. I feel like there's maybe something in Elbathian lore and the mythology surrounding the sun god Nika that ties it back to a cow's skull or something. I don't know, but maybe Road was just being like, oh, sun god, I'll just grab whatever junk I have in my prop chest and put it on, and that's what he had. But I don't know, it's a little weird. Then we have a woman, a very large woman that has two-toned hair, smokes a cigar, wears sunglasses, and has sharp teeth. A lot of people have been saying she's probably Killingham's mom, in which case, Killingham, your mom's hot. I'm just saying, okay? So we got Killingham's sexy mom, and then we have this old dude. I don't know, like on the wiki, it listed him as like an older guy. I don't know, because he's a Yeti. I'm assuming it's a dude that has the power of some kind of like Yeti zone, right?
I don't think it's a different, like, race or tribe in One Piece we've yet to see. It just screams, like, devil fruit ability to me, and also kind of resembles, like, something from Where the Wild Things Are. But yeah, really big dude, horns, he's got the grinning smile, also razor-sharp teeth, covered in fur, and also, like, bat-like wings on his back. So that's interesting. So those are four. Which one am I forgetting? Oh, the Man-Meyer lady. The Man-Meyer lady with blue hair that was wearing the cap that was speaking. We also saw her during Kuma's flashback, but she was speaking to Gunko in the most recent one, like, oh, Gunko, now that we have you here, we're a shoo-in to win. The Man-Meyers are gonna win this one, okay? So that's kind of an idea also that, like, Gunko maybe was just recently introduced into the Man-Meyer family. We don't know. We see Gunko during the flashback with Emu 56 years ago when she was, I guess, like, Emu's servant or something like that, and so now as a God's Knight in training, and then in the present, she's a proper God's Knight. Right, okay. Hold up a moment. Before we continue, I just wanted to bring up, we have seen probably two other members of the God's Knights. Not 100% confirmed, but they were very unique-looking characters that Oda did spotlight in one panel each during Kuma's flashback. Garling was having a conversation with one of them. He was like, stay back, children. I'll show you how it's done, sort of thing. And we see a close-up of a dude that has a gas mask. Kind of looks similar to one of the kids from the Lamb's house that Mother Caramel was raising. Probably isn't the same character, but I'm assuming that dude that has such a unique design is also a member of the God's Knights. And then we also see a person that looks like a very standard, like, fairy tale prince. He has purple hair in the anime. Doesn't say anything, is just kind of there. I'm also assuming that is a member of the God's Knights. It's also in the scene where we see the woman with the blue hair, but she specifically mentions that she is a member of the Man-Meyer family, right? We did also learn about a brand new family, the Bevette family, in the last chapter, so maybe these characters are part of that clan. I'm not really sure exactly, but felt like I should at least mention those two. Okay, so these are obviously not all the members of the God's Knights, and keep in mind, these are spread across two different timelines, all right? So that's why people have been saying, like, oh, that woman kind of looked a lot like Killingham. They're probably both members of the Lemo Shift family. If you want to say that is just Killingham's mom, go right ahead, that's fine. And then Killingham, her son, is now currently a God's Knight, okay? We know there's a type of immortality that's added to this, well, at least when it comes to the Gorosei and the Gunko, apparently, but when it comes to other members of the God's Knights, they do get the immortality, or at least a degree of immortality, because as Scopper Gabon said, they are by no means completely immortal, but they can recover from pretty much any injury, but they still age. Summer's clearly aged, Garling clearly aged. Gunko did not. So something probably unique with her that gets, the Eternal Youth package on top of the Immortality package. But we'll explore that as we go. If nothing else, not all the God's Knights receive this. They're probably capable of just growing old, and unless they get promoted to Gorosei or if Eam interferes, they probably just die natural deaths, I would assume. Okay? So we have that situation. There are probably a lot more of them, like when Dragon was discussing this with the Revolutionary Army, that like, oh, the God's Knights are going to be mobilizing pretty soon. We see like the silhouettes of all of them. There were like 9 or 10 in that silhouette right then and there. So even if you're just talking about the ones that are currently active right now that we know of, Garling got promoted. So we have Shamrock, Gunko, Summers, and Killingham. That's only 4. Some of these other ones could have still been active from their day, or maybe they got promoted to other positions. This is probably a good point to talk about the titles that Garling and Shamrock both hold, okay? So Garling had the title of Supreme Commander, or Saiko Shirei Khan. It means essentially Saiko, highest, most supreme, position you can have, Shirei Khan, commanding officer. So these are very, like, military-esque titles. So, like, in our world, if you were the commander-in-chief of an entire military for a whole nation, you would be given the title Saiko Shirei Khan, all right? So just to give you an idea on the scale of this, that was Garling's previous title before he got promoted to Gorosei. So just to kind of zoom out a little bit and look at the most high-ranking positions in the world government, let's start with Fleet Admiral. Fleet Admiral of the Marines is like right here. That's Akainu right now, okay? Then we have above him Commander-in-Chief of the world government. That is Kong. So Kong's 1 level up from Akainu. Then I'm assuming we have just the God's Knights in general. And then we have, after that, the Supreme Commander of those God's Knights, which used to be Garling. And then after that, we've seen that there's really probably no positions in between. It goes Supreme Commander of God's Knights straight up to Gorosei. And then beyond Gorosei, we have Imu. So that really kind of paints a picture on like how frustrated Akainu really is. Like he receives the title of Fleet Admiral where there's so many other Marine ranks below that you have to achieve. Becoming Fleet Admiral is not an easy thing to do, and only one person can have the title, and there's still like 6 or 7 people above you, plus the shadow ruler of the entire world. So you can see that he's kind of like, man, I can't change anything with this position, So that's the situation with Akainu. Also kind of shows why he was the one there to protect Marijua when Kuma attacked. They basically sent out their guard dog to deal with the situation, who was just the Fleet Admiral of the Marines, is their guard dog. Because if Kuma made it past him, then he'd have to deal with Kong, I guess, and only then, I guess, would the God's Knights, actually mobilize and start to do things. Maybe if Kong was defeated, then they would move. Also, Cypher Pole Zero is, I guess, also, well, they're directly under the Celestial Dragons. Kong ostensibly controls all the other Cypher Poles under his direct authority, I suppose. Okay, so yeah, Garling, Saiko Shirei Khan, highest position. Shamrock might be receiving that now. He went back to Marijua, which, by the way, does anybody else think it's weird that, like, hey guys, Shamrock exists in the story, give a little bit of backstory with him, he's Shanks' brother, okay, he's gone. Is Shamrock going to return to Elbaf? Is he going to pop in through the abyss and just be like, okay, what did I miss? Whoa, what's going on here, guys? Start the party without me? And then Luffy sees him and like, whoa. I think that might be just what, like, Oda had to do really briefly at the very least. Like, as soon as Luffy sees Shamrock, shit's gonna go down. like how would Luffy even respond to Shamrock is the question. I think knowing Luffy's personality and his hockey and everything, one glance he would immediately realize. In fact, I would love to see a scene where he's not even fooled. Luffy can be an easily fooled dude, right? And he's even mixed up people's appearances before. He thought Kaku was Usopp at one point, remember? I would fucking love a scene where Luffy looks right at Shamrock and without even missing a beat or any humor or comedy, Luffy's just like, who are you? You're not Shanks. Who are you? And Shamrock would be like, very astute. It didn't even fool you. Yeah, I'm Shamrock. I'm his older brother. It's like, okay. So that would actually be really cool. That would be cool. So we'll see that. Okay. Shamrock's title, though, when he was introduced, was just Dancho. Dancho just meaning, like, leader of a particular army division, like the captain of a particular army corps or something like that. Very much like a group of people, high ranking, of course, but not nearly on the level of commander of an entire army or fleet, okay? So, how many God's Knights are there? I want to say there's only like 10, and then you have Shamrock that's the leader of that particular group, and then Garling above him for everybody. But it would also make sense if there were like multiple squads, okay? So we could still do it. Maybe not. Let's bolster the numbers to like maybe 20, right? And then we could have like 5 squads of 4 God's Knights or something like that, right? And then you could have like 5 squads of 4 and like, you know, there's a captain for each of those squads and like 3 people under them, or we could bolster the numbers even more to go to like 25. Might be getting to be too many at this point. I mean, then again, remember, I mean, there's 19 founding families that live in Marijois right now. The Nefeltari family was number 20, but they don't live there, right? So I would assume, considering also the way the God Valley tournament, the hunting competition is set up, the clans are competing against each other for like the leaderboard rankings, right? Who has like who scored the most points for their house or something like that, right? It wouldn't make much sense, I guess, if there was only like 10 of the God's Knights. There's got to be more than that, right? There has to be like, I would say at least over 20 to make this competition like a little bit interesting for the Celestial Dragons back at Marijois, right? For having each family submit like a few different champions, okay? I mean, we know at least there's multiple Manmeyers in there. There's multiple Figarland family members and things like that, right? So I would assume it's not just like, even if we just went with 1 God's Knights per house, that's still 19 members just right then and there, okay? But it would most likely be more than that. So yeah, I'm going to assume Shamrock is the captain, the commander, Doncho, of a particular squad of God's Knights, and that squad includes Gunko, and maybe, you know, you could switch out from other squads or something like that when you need help or something. I'm not really sure how this all goes down. Maybe the Supreme Commander has to approve it, of just like, okay, maybe Killingham and Summers were not originally part of Shamrock's squad, but they got, you know, sent anyway. Not really sure how all that goes down, but that's the way. It's very military kind of titles that they have for this, okay? So then, yeah, we have the Devoted Blade of God, which Gunko has, at least during the flashback at God Valley, and one of the Celestial Dragons, when they were taking bets on who was going to win the solo competition, mentioned that, like, oh, she's like the pet of the gods or something like that, like the knight's like squire or page or something. Doesn't it go, it's been a while since I've looked into like my, you know, medieval type history, but doesn't it go like you become a squire first, and then after you're successful as a squire, you become a page, and then after you become a page, you become a knight, at least if I remember this correctly, you know, from like history class or something, right? Okay. But yeah, she clearly is like not a full-fledged God's Knight at that point, but also has a very particular position because she was clearly working directly under Emu. So maybe the way it has to go is like you have to work as a servant under Emu first. So we have all of the Celestial Dragons living in the city that are just awash in luxury, right? And they're just like the most awful human beings ever, right? And so a few of them maybe get selected to go and be Emu's like personal servant or slave. And then Emu might like brainwash you and do some weird shit. You know, we know that like Emu was able just to take possession of Gunko whenever. So maybe it's like you have to go do that for a while. And then after you've like been properly like brainwashed or some shit where you know you're not going to rebel, or Emu could just flip the switch and take you over, that's when you get into the God's Knights. And then you work your way up the ranks there, and then there's different positions like Doncho once you get into the God's Knights. I'm not sure, or if Gunko's like, Oda's really setting up Gunko's past, I think, to be something to be focused on here, and it involves Brooke, so when we get Brooke's flashback, Gunko's going to factor into that, and it all becomes just a thing where it seems Gunko's story is unique amongst the Celestial Dragons and the God's Knights. Her story might not be the standard, okay? It might be as simple as you have the Celestial Dragons in the city, and each family selects a few members that are particularly talented in like battle, and like train them up to use a sword. And it's like if they cut the mustard, then they become a member of the elite squad of the God's Knights, and if they don't, they just live in their giant opulent diamond palaces in the Celestial Dragon City, which is like what most of them definitely do. But a few of them probably like, oh, I want to learn the ways of battle, and I want a devil fruit and all that kind of shit, right? And so it's like, all right, well, if you think you're up for it, join the God's Knights. But once again, if Garling was the supreme commander for the majority of the last few decades, if, a recruit came in and just wasn't up to the stuff to be of that level, they would just get kicked out, because the God's Knight have to be like, ultimately, I mean, the Gorosei are too, but ultimately they are the final line of defense for Emu. Like, let's say when Dragon's Revolution finally does happen and like an entire army is invading Marijois, at that point, it's time for the God's Knights to mobilize, right? The God's Knights are most likely going to be fighting the high-ranking officers of the Revolutionary Army, the way I could see this going down. So Morley, Bello Betty, Lindbergh, and Karasu are each probably going to have a really sick fight against individual members of the God's Knights, which is also a thing because we also have the God's Knights we're fighting right now on Elbaf. So, like, Zoro and Sanji and Luffy and Loki, they're all going to fight probably these God's Knights as well, and so they might just get defeated here. Like, Luffy learned from Scopper, like, hey, use your conquerors the right way and you could bypass their immortality. Luffy has to defeat a God's Knight here. Not saying it has to be Shamrock, but Luffy has to defeat a God's Knight here to at least showcase that, like, oh, I've mastered, like, a new level of conquerors, to kind of give him his level up for the arc. Same thing with Zoro and Sanji. I could see, Zoro fighting against Summers. I could see Sanji fighting against Killingham, you know what I mean? Brook, after, he gets freed, has to go and have the interaction with Gunko and be like, I remember you, yo, do you remember me, and then Gunko is trying to fight like the possession from Emu or something, like, Brook, I love your music, and Emu's like, silence, we don't like music, What kind of music would Emu listen to? Emu probably listens to the most extreme emo of all time, all right? I don't know. Maybe Shamrock likes Amon Amarth. I don't know what kind of music styles the God's Knights are into here. But yeah, just sitting down and thinking about it, we have 10 of them so far, and a lot of them are popping up in this flashback. There has to be more, because I would assume each house at least sends 2 or 3 of their best soldiers, especially since they're competing against one another. Like, the Remo Shift family is like, oh, we can't let the Manmeyers win. We're going to send not just our best soldier, like one person. We're going to send, like, multiple people, right? Because they're competing with each other. I don't know. 3 of the best soldiers from each house? What would that get us? Oh, God, 19 times 3. Oh, we're outside of the times tables I'm used to. 57. That's 57 right then and there. Right? So probably going to be quite a few God's Knights. Not all of them are probably going to be named and relevant. We might get to the point where they're not all on the level of Summers and Shamrock and Gunko, but then, the Revolutionary Army attacks and, like, some random God's Knights that we've never heard of fight against the revolutionaries. And so we'll see what happens there, I suppose, right? But in terms of Devil Fruits, we've seen some mythical zones from them, and we've seen some really strong Paramecias from them. We've yet to see any Logias from them. And you got to understand that, like, okay, the world government controls a good chunk of the planet, Blue Planet, that we know the name of it now. So you'd assume they would, like, all the strongest devil fruits for their own knights, all right? And Logias are mentioned to be, like, the rarest of the base 3 categories, and we've yet to see of the God's Knights having any Logias. I feel like they have to have at least a few. Also, we might be running out of, like, elements for the Logias, but if, like, the Admirals and the Marines had Logia powers and the God's Knights didn't, that would be weird. Also, I wonder if Logia powers would interfere with the God's Knight's immortality in any way. Because it's sort of like a Logia power anyway. Like, when a God's Knight, or a Gorosei for that matter, gets heavy damage, like, even if, like what we saw when Kuma punched out Saturn, half of his freaking face got blown off. And then it just, like, it just glorps back together, very much like the intangibility of a Logia. So maybe that has something to do with it, or maybe, like, even, like, imagine if Oda gave a Logia to Summers and Summers had the power of like to turn into flames or something. Let's just use that for an example. I know Sabo has it, but let's just give that an example. You know, it'd be like, okay, he can, you know, reform his body if it's broken apart through that like miasma, you know, that all the Gods Knights use, like the weird fog powers that just kind of glorp you back together. But then also introducing like flames or an element like electricity or magma or ice into that might just make that kind of indistinguishable in order to draw it on a page. You know what I mean? Like, oh, is he healing because of his immortality or is he healing because of his Logia? So maybe that's why Oda doesn't want to like mix the two different like powers, the immortality ability and the Logia abilities. I don't know. But there's still got to be a few Logias, you know, hanging out around there somewhere, like out in the world. So I would assume they would have some of them. But then again, mythical zones were stated to be even more rare than Logias, despite that we saw quite a few of them in Wano as well. Like Kaido had a mythical, Yamato has a mythical. We also saw, you know, Onimaru had a mythical, Orochi had a mythical, right? So like they're as rare as Logias, but I think right now, including the Gorosei, there's more mythical zones than there are Logias. So let me know what you think about that. Yeah, that's kind of just a brief summary on what we know about the Gods Knights currently. They do have a symbol. The symbol appears on their armbands, but then I think there was also, like, a symbol that was, like, different. Like, it does appear to change. I don't know if that's just Oda's, like, you know, oh, he forgot one symbol from the next time he drew it, or if it is actually a different seal. But I think we've seen, like, a couple of variants, which isn't that unusual. Even with, like, Pirate Jolly Rogers and, like, the tattoos some pirates have, there seem to be some inconsistencies. Like, remember, not inconsistencies, but, like, Whitebeard's crew has, like, a main Jolly Roger and, like, a secondary standard that they use as well. So, like, it could be something like that. And there's a few more mysteries to unlock about them, certainly. But let me know down below, how many Gods Knights do you think there's going to be total? Do you think there's going to be any Logias within the Gods Knights ranks? And do you think Shamrock's going to return when we get back to Elbaf? He's going to pop out of the portal again and be like, if time dilation is a thing, he could be at Marijois for like several days, if not weeks, and then come back to Elbaf to finish the job. To him, it's been like 2 months. To everybody else, it's only been like an hour, if that. So there we go. Anyway, that's the video. Thanks to everybody for watching. This will be Teching 101 signing out. Later.